And so the presentation goes on, and we have other presentations that are done with this. And what I will do now is to end this, and then I'll have it that it's presented sort of this one continuous item, and you'll see it in different uploads that we'll have. But this is how we began the Transforming Trauma Thru Transcendence, which is the name of the seminar. And we'll bring them forth at this time because our intent in 2019 is to do this particular seminar at least 3, possibly even 4 different times this year. There is a clear need for it. Again, our approach to this particular seminar, this particular experience, is a little different than others because our approach, we have 4 foundational pieces that we lay down to begin with. And those foundational pieces deal with the aspect of a person taking responsibility for his or her own life. So they are foundational. And we try to make it very explicit to anyone that's involved in what we're doing. They're very challenging foundational pieces, but they come out of research that I did in regard to my dissertation. They come out of research that I did as I wrote the dissertation in 2005. They are born out of experiences of people, including those that were involved in the Holocaust, and then those that were involved in Rwanda, South Africa, I believe, is a place that I looked. The reconciliation that was done there in that country, how they approached it, and so it comes out of research. And I mentioned the book, my own book, I Will Restore, that dealt with physical and sexual abuse of African American males occurring prior to the age of puberty. And so what I was looking at in regard to that is that many times the abuse is inflicted by individuals who have relationships within a family. And so there was a need for these principles, else you would just simply destroy your entire family, immediate family, and extended family. And I saw no way that I wanted that to happen in my own family, nor did I want it to happen generationally going forward. I just saw no way that should take place, especially after I had done the research in regard to the impact of slavery that still exists. It existed then in 2005 and still is being dealt with today. And so I clearly did not want to just continue that generational violence that we had done to each other, did not want to continue it, but also wanted to create a new future for us going forward. And this was the best way. And so those foundational pieces were there in regard to moving this forward. And those foundational pieces were basically 4 items. Those 4 items were, you begin with taking 100% responsibility for your life. 100% responsibility for your life. And you can look at that 100% responsibility from the standpoint of such things as when you might want to take 100% responsibility. Now, you could say, well, I'll take 100% responsibility for my life going forward. From this day forward, I take 100% responsibility for my life going forward. And that's good. that you are doing that as well. You take 100% from this day forward, because the person would look and say, well, I wasn't responsible for blank, 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 blank. That happened in my past. That's one way that can be done. And if that's what you can do, then that's what you can do. Another person may look and see that there is a text in the Bible that says things like the counsel of peace was between those two. And that's a very interesting text to me. That's a very interesting text, because between what two? And then there is text in the Bible again that says all things work together for good for those who love God and are called in accordance with his purpose, with God's purpose. All of these kinds of texts. So there's no easy answers for me in regard to that. And then there are individuals in the past. The Egyptian civilization was built on the idea that there is an afterlife. And then the Hindu civilization is built on the idea that there are reincarnations that take place. And so all of these come into play in what I'm talking about in regard to this aspect of taking 100% responsibility for one's life. And so this has to be taken into consideration from where I sit and from what I'm speaking about here. Because trauma, in one form or another, is really universal in this world. It's really universal. Whether it is things such as what are called natural disasters that we see all the time, whether they're hurricanes or fires or whatever it may be, tsunamis. And when you look around the world and you consider them, I initially started, of course, with physical sexual abuse happening prior to the age of puberty. But today we have human trafficking, and there's a conversation in regard to that. We have the threat of climate change, and there's a conversation in regard to that. We have all of these things that are taking place. The idea of individuals that are coming to the U.S. and they're coming, as they say, coming to the U.S. from different countries all over the world, and they're coming to escape where they are in the hope of a better life. So there are all kinds of trauma. So trauma, my point is that trauma seems to be universal. And so what is causing the trauma? Well, in some respects, sometimes it is humans causing trauma to other people. And then even on the streets, we find that whether it is individuals doing harm to others, they could be in uniform, they could be out of uniform, whatever it may be, trauma is something that is occurring in the lives of individuals. Well, what do you do with that? You could actually arrive at the point that some kind of way, there's some kind of control that I have in regard to that. And the person must look at that, because otherwise we are just some kind of objects that some capricious God or some forces, whether they're governmental or whatever, something, we're just some kind of puppets or playthings of something, some forces in the world. And a person can take that as their stance in life. And if that works for you, then that works for you. That's your decision as to that. But the idea is to take 100% responsibility for one's life. And the other thing, we spoke of a book that has a copyright date of 1989, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, by an individual named Stephen Covey. Inside his book, he had what was called the circle of concern and the circle of influence. And you can look at it from that perspective. The circle of concern, you can draw a circle around all the things that you have a concern about, but you can't really do anything about it. And then there's a circle of influence, which is a smaller circle. And those are the things that you can do something about. And you look at that particular diagram, that particular set of circles, concentric circles, one inside the other. And you can shrink the circle of influence to the point that it's whatever it is that you have the ability to say, I'm 100% responsible for that. And you work with that in regard to, I know that I can impact that. I'm 100% responsible in this circle of influence. And you work with that. So again, it's working with those particular items is what we're talking about there. So 100% responsibility, whichever way you want to work with that particular item. And then the second item was to blame no one. Now notice that I did not say blame no one person, blame no one thing. It was blame no one. If you say blame no one person, then really, when you're working with any kind of trauma, there's rarely just one person that sets up a situation in which a person is traumatized. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces of persons that have to be aligned in a certain kind of way for something traumatic to happen. There's a lot of places where it has to be a dropping of the ball, so to speak, a dropping of responsibility. And there are indicators of trauma or trauma that's about to happen that a lot of people should pay attention, especially when it is a child that is involved in it. And so blame no one. And really all this is trying to avoid just being totally upset and feeling totally powerless, because the intent of transforming trauma through transcendence is to move you into a realm in which you are empowered. That's the intent. And it can be imaginary, that I imagine that I have power. And that's good. That's good. You imagine that you have power. Some kind of way. For me, the escape was that I escaped into the closets in my home. There was an escape. I escaped also under the house. It was large enough. It sat on bricks or stones, and I could crawl under the house. And I did that too. And so I needed to escape from my trauma, which involved getting beat as a child, physically, with a belt or whatever was handy there as a child. So that was one aspect of the trauma. So the aspect was I didn't want to blame or hate or whatever the term may be. But I did want to and did need to look at the trauma that had occurred in my life. But I didn't want to blame the person who had traumatized me. That person was my mama. And I loved my mama. And I came to understand that she had been traumatized. And when I understood her, it was then that I was able to help her. I tell people that my mama was abandoned when she was born by her father. He never claimed her as his child. And not only that, but her mother, we to this day do not know who her mother's father is. We don't know who her mother's father is. So my mother's father abandoned her at birth. In addition to that, my mother was raped as a child. My mother was bullied as a child. And she was bullied because of the fact that she had what we call crossed eyes. So she was bullied as a child. And not only that, she was bullied by someone who actually could have been bullied herself, because that other individual, according to my uncle, was actually someone that had things that also set them apart as being different. And yet this person was bullying my mother. And that ended up because my mother, feeling her pain and not knowing how to deal with it, then gave me pain. And not just me, my other siblings. So blame no one. That's just one instance of that. And the other one was feel no shame. Feel no shame. 100% responsibility. Blame no one. Feel no shame. Feel no shame. Shame is where you feel that something is missing from your personhood. Like, whatever it is that you are, it's like a piece of you is missing. Inadequacy, and something has been left out. You're just not whole for whatever reason, and you haven't figured that out. It's like either something was left out or something was stolen or whatever it may be. And the opposite of feel no shame is to feel whole and to feel adequate. And that's what Transforming Trauma Through Transcendence has the intent of helping an individual to realize, is that I am whole, I am perfect, I am enough. I'm adequate. I'm more than enough. And to remove all of this stuff that we say to ourselves in regard to I'm not enough, or that saying to God that I don't deserve your mercies and all of this stuff, or I'm separated from God, or that I'm a sinner and all of this stuff, and to replace it with the idea that I'm a child of God, that I have divine DNA. There's never been a moment in life that God has taken God's spirit from a human being. There's a text in the Bible where it says God breathed into man the breath of life. And there's never a moment that says that God took it away from man. Never do I see that. Never. We're always God's children. Always. The New Testament says now we are God's children. And now is always present tense. Now. The Bible says of the prodigal son that he came to himself. He had forgotten that he was God's child. He was forgotten that he was his father's child. It wasn't that he wasn't his father's child. He had forgotten. His mind became disconnected to the memory, or to the fact, or to the truth that he was God's child. David may have had one bad day in his life where he said, I was born in sin and shapen in iniquity. One bad day, one bad experience, and that has been blown up to make people feel terrible for all of their lives. But he had a lot of good days. One place he said, where can I go from thy presence? If I ascend to heaven, thou art there. If I descend to the lower parts of the earth, thou there. If I take the wings of the morning and fly to whatever the uttermost parts of the earth, even there shall thy hand find me. Then David said something that was just profoundly beneficial to me. He says, this I know. Now, this is David. David was someone, you think about it. I doubt if David could be president today. Think about it. He couldn't be a saint today. David took the man's wife, had the man murdered, married his wife. He was a king. Married his wife. And then promised that man, that woman, that her son, this had to be the second son because the first son died, that her son would be king. And it was not David's first son. Her son would be king. That woman was no fool. Bathsheba was no fool. She got a promise from David early, before the child was even able to have a conversation. She got a promise from David early. My child is going to sit on the throne, your throne. And when David was older, about to die, nearly blind, and needed some other woman to sleep in his bed to keep him warm, she came in to this vulnerable old man, if you will, and said to this man, look, you made a promise to me. You said my king, you said my son was going to be king. And David told her, go get my advisors and go get my royal donkey. My royal donkey. You can use another word there. And have your son ride in the middle of the city on the royal donkey. And put my advisors all around him. And this will be a symbol that your son has my blessings to be king. And that son, Solomon, became king. Now that could be seen as by people, well, that's just a human doing this. But here's the interesting thing about that, is that Solomon then spoke to God, according to the Bible, and said, God, I need your assurance that I'm the king. I'm the rightful king. Even though my mama was Bathsheba, and even though this is how it came about. He said, I need your assurance. He said, I'll make a covenant with you, or I'll make a deal with you. Let's make a deal. He said, I will build you a temple. He didn't mean I physically will build it. He mean I'll design it. I'll get the labor that will put it together. I'll build you a temple. And provided I build you a temple, then I want you to fill it with your glory. And no doubt it took years to build that temple. It took a lot of effort to engineer that. It took a lot of money to engineer that. It had to be one, as they say, of the wonders of the world. The design and the whole description of it in the Bible, the exactness with which it is described, and no doubt built. And when it was built, Solomon praised this wonderful prayer that's found in the Bible. Wonderful prayer. And the thing is that God, Spirit, filled that temple. That's the point. Filled that temple. Filled it as an indication that God had heard the prayer and that God answered the prayer. "100% responsibility. Blame no one. Forgive everybody." The fourth item was join or form a beloved community. When you're recovering, being healed from traumatic experience, you need a safe place where you can grow. And so we say to individuals, join or form. If where you are is not safe for you to tell your story, and the community that we're talking about could just be one other person, somebody that you can be real with, who is not going to take your vulnerability and use it to destroy you. You must be wise. When people use what you say, when you're open and exposed, and then they turn around and then use it like a dagger and just plunge it into you, and you will feel this when they do it. That's not the community that I'm talking about here. Join or form a beloved community. And so if what you're doing and where you are is not safe, then form one. Join one. Get a place where you can be real. And be a place where you can be real, where others can be real with you. That's not always an easy task. And so again, we go through that in regard to individuals. We help them to be that space, to be that place. And so those are the four foundational pieces that we lay down. And we encourage people to be that for themselves and be that for others. And then we go through the aspect of the new story. And it's a process of healing. It's not the only process. It's not the process. It is a process that Spirit has given, that has worked. The items that we used at the Transforming Trauma Thru Transcendence workshop and seminar, tremendous success. People really formed groups from the book, the I Will Restore book that we used. They formed groups from that. I heard individuals that said, like 3 sisters that just got the book. One of them attended the seminar. When they left the seminar, they just simply, this one then got her 3 sisters and just simply had them study the book with her. And she just simply used what she had learned at the seminar, and they were able to bring about healing for themselves. And as I said, when it came to myself and my own journey, what I did with my mother was I took my mother to see her dying daddy. He was on his deathbed. At the time I took her to see her dying daddy, she was 60 years old. She had never heard him say that she was his child or that he was her father. Never heard it. And that still hurt her. But I was her oldest son. Please hear that. I was her oldest son. And I took her to see her dying father. And she heard with her own ears, looking at him on that bed, she heard him say that he was her father. First time in her life, 60 years old. She had carried that for 60 years. And she felt that. She felt that. I watched her and she felt that. My healing had benefited her. When he passed, she was not included in the obituary that was written out, not included, not acknowledged. It was something that she had within herself. People sometimes continue the pain of other people. But at least she had that. At least she had that. And I had my mama. I understood her pain and what she had been through. I understood her pain. So this is real talk, real experience in life. And so that's what Transforming Trauma Through Transcendence is about. Not trying to escape life or anything like that. Not trying to do that. Not trying to pretend that what is third dimensional is not third dimensional. Not trying to do that by any stretch of the imagination. So we'll post the other items so that you can listen to the seminar that we had done previously. We'll go in regard to that. This podcasting is new to me. But we will share with you other things that we've done. This is the most current and contemporaneous item that I have likely ever done in my entire life. But my desire is for life in the world, life for people in the world, to be different, I guess, if individuals desire it, not forcing anything on anybody. But I see that people can have a different life. I call it the 4D life, life that is desired by them. That's their choice, their desire. Then life that is defined by them. Life that is divinely intended for them. And then life that is lived on the fourth dimensional level. And the intent is that as one envisions that life, so that it's not just something that is helter-skelter in the sense that people have a desire and 1 minute later they got a different desire, and then a minute later they got a different desire. Their minds are just scattered. And if each one of those come to pass, we just have chaos in the world. That's not what this is about. And the person would have chaos in their own life. And many times that may be exactly what they have in their life. That's not what this is about. Not what I want for my own life. And many times when people are talking to me, they mention that they want something different than what they have. And so I have talked to individuals and facilitated for individuals the entire experience of something different. And they have been benefited by that. But it's their choice as it is your choice of something different. So we'll upload these items and have them available to you and to others. around the world. This is I Will Restore Blog Talk Radio and I Will Restore podcast that we're doing. We've done this now for a little bit this morning. Good morning to you. Good Sunday morning, February the 10th. It's 6:22 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. God's blessings to you, and we'll talk with you later. Blessings. Bye-bye.